All right then, folks, thank you for joining us for another new and exciting episode of the Whiskey Cove. Well, this is going to be part 2 of the ultimate Old Forester blind battle. So last edition of this series, we saw 5 bastions of the Old Forester lineup take on what was one of the blind battles of the century. And today, we're there back for more in part 2. Run the video. Alrighty then, folks, thank you for joining us for another new and exciting episode of the Whiskey Cove. And as you can see right in front of you, before your very eyes, we have 5 bastions of the whiskey world. And that is because this is part 2 of the ultimate Old Forester blind battle. So if you haven't seen part 1, definitely go over and check that out, because I threw up some results which I wasn't prepared for. However, we might see some more today. And the 5 that are going to battle it out are going to be the Old Forester 1897, the Old Forester Bottled and Bond 117, Old Forester 100, Old Forester 1920, and then lastly, Old Forester Barrel Strength. So what we did to try to even the playing field a little bit, we chose the lowest ABV Old Forester Barrel Strength that I have, and that is going to be 62.35% ABV. So we just try to level it out as best as we can. I feel like we achieved that with that one. If you're not a subscriber to the Whiskey Cove, definitely consider being it. Some folks have been telling me lately that they actually aren't a subscriber, and they totally forgot that they weren't, because YouTube had just been recommended in this channel to a lot of people. So definitely check on that, hit that bell icon so you keep up to date with all of these excellent blind battles. And also as well, we knock out our whiskey video every month. There are whiskeys to look out for. So if you're someone who is interested in finding the most up-to-date new whiskey, then you definitely want to be looking out for those videos as well. So let's get these whiskey into glasses. Let's get my wife down here to mix them up, and let's get into this blind. Thank you to all the subscribers. Let's get into this video. We will start with glass 1 and move on over to glass 5. So your left, your right. So glass number 1. A little savory note there, actually. You get the sweetness, you get the savory note there. Almost kind of like some sort of cookie that has a salt note to it, like a macadamia nut with a sprinkle of salt over the top. With some of the Christmas spices, a little bit of like dried cherry in there as well. Very approachable, as is going to be with all of these whiskeys. Old Forester in general is a very approachable whiskey. Real caramel sweetness, touch of wood. Let's go in for a taste here. Maybe a little bit more spiciness there on the palate, a little bit more maybe like an ethanol burn there, but more of a nice woody, sweet, savory, kind of rounded out ethanol note, not just like a usual proofy ethanol note. You get the sweetness, and then that slowly, that kind of maple sauce kind of caramel sweetness that slowly transitions out. And then you get the ethanol burn that kind of takes over a little bit, but it's like a high proof, woody cherry liqueur ethanol burn. And then on the backbone, you're getting maybe, again, with that kind of savory cookie note, that's the shortbready note. Very great start on glass 1 here. Let's reset the palate and then move into glass 2. Very similar actually to glass 1. And of course, there's going to be similarities between all of these, but really hard to actually pick apart something that's different at this point. Maybe it is leaning more into the red berry fruit kind of range here. And maybe it doesn't have the proof that the first one carried. And like I said, I'm not necessarily saying that the first one is high proof, but it had a decent amount there. Where this is more cordial, sweeter based. Does kind of have like a cherry old-fashioned vibe there, with like the Angus Star bitters. Really inviting those. Let's go in for a taste here, glass 2. Doesn't drink anywhere near as hot as the first one. Drinks a little bit more lower proof. You're getting a real richness that's running through this one. Again, think that cherried, old-fashioned. High West do sometimes, if you're lucky enough to find them, a barrel-finished American Prairie and a used barreled Manhattan, and it kind of has some of those vibes, like the cherryness, the sweet vermouth vibes of a barreled Manhattan. without kind of much of that heat. It's kind of really nice and rounded out. Not too much wood, a lot more sweeter vibes with glass 2. You're also getting a little bit of like a popcorny, yeasty note, but it's definitely that sweetness kind of paints over a lot of what's going on with that. Not necessarily saying that that was a bad thing to begin with, but it just kind of dominated by real cherry sweetness. Again, another great sipper so far. That is glass number 2. So we're going to move into the crux of this blind, glass 3 here. Okay, now we're tasting and nosing something that's a little different here. This kind of has risen out of the sweet depths that it has been the molasses and maple forwardness of the first two. And we're getting a lot more fresher. This whiskey is like a lost ball at sea, just bobbing along under the water, and all of a sudden it kind of bobs up, takes a big deep breath, and it just feels like that nice freshness is kind of rolling in here. Because it has some pencil shaving vibes to it, but also at the same time, fresh apple slices there. Like again, nice fresh red apple, like we said about one of the whiskeys there before. More vanilla and just a more lighter presence in the glass, more like lighter flavors, lighter fruit, not as burnt caramel, not as toasty, not as wood presence there. Real interesting whiskey coming off the back of these two. Let's go in for a taste here. Has a butteriness to it, like a nice Scottish Highland buttery shortbread that you've just kind of laid on some nice chopped fresh apple, maybe even like some tangerines, because there's like an orange zesty vibe there as well. And then like cracked a vanilla pod sliced up and sprinkled over the top. Just really makes for a really nice uplifting experience on this one. Doesn't feel like there's much proof going on there. It's just a really nice, lighter, well-rounded whiskey. Really great addition coming off the back of those two. Not saying one is better than the others, but just I wasn't expecting that. I was just expecting more of the same. Let's reset the palate, and we have 2 left. Okay, now I feel like we're rocking more back into the burnt sugar notes, the barrel characteristics, kind of like the double oaked style marshmallowy vibes here. Definitely like you just got a marshmallow, dipped it in some cherry liqueur, dipped it in some brown sugar, put it in between 2 graham crackers after slowly toasting it, taking a bite. Has those savory, almost slightly salty notes, but then also as well, you're getting the cherry and you're getting an abundance of burnt sugars there. A little bit more wood on this one than the third glass here. There's just a real richness and a real excitability around those richness, sweeter richness notes in this glass. Let's go in for a taste here. That was really good. It felt like it had more age on the back, more leather, more dried wood there as well, and a little bit of pepper and spice that are doing the tango on your tongue. It's definitely a longer finish, it's definitely a drier finish, has the beautiful sweeter caramel cherry notes up front, but it does a good job of balancing everything out and folding it up and just delivering it into a package that really works. Really well balanced whiskey. Fantastic addition to 4 so far. So we have 1 left. This is glass 5. Let's delve into glass 5 after resetting the palate. Has a lot of similarities actually to the last glass. So a lot of people will say, as you do in blinds, depending on where the whiskey is in the blind lineup, can directly impact how well you perceive it. Because if you're coming off the back of other whiskeys, your palate's taking time to adjust. And I do leave my palate time to adjust. And I do like to go back through them a few times to make sure I'm getting the correct information and picking up the correct nuances. So we try to do our best here to be able to provide those results as fair as we can. But with this one, it almost is like a combination of these last two. Well, heck, it's a bit of a combination of all of them, if I'm completely honest, because it is Old Forester. But there is definitely more of like a peanut shell note here. Not necessarily like a heaven hell, where it's like a peanut butter forward, but it's almost like the red skin of a peanut, combined with some of the lighter, woodier, oaky notes there as well. And maybe like a touch of raspberry compote not quite leaning into the cherry with this one. You're getting more like the cane sugar sweetness, if anything, with the red berry, which is the raspberry. Let's go in for a taste here. Wasn't expecting that on the palate. Real woodiness. Again, that peanut note comes through again. No heat on the palate, and it just dies to death. Kind of knows really well. You get a nice sweetness on the palate to begin with, but then it just literally falls off a cliff. The flavors that are expecting to transition out of the palate, it just completely disappears. You get that peanut note, maybe like a peanut brittle added with some caramel sweetness, but the spice doesn't come through. There's no heat there as well, and it does fall off a cliff. Which is interesting because Glass 5 can usually be one of the better whiskeys. However, in this lineup, so far it is not doing well. So this is what we'll do. We'll pause the camera. Again, I'll taste through them a little bit more and then we'll come back and put them in an order. Alrighty then, folks. Through much deliberation, I feel like we have them in order. And I would be lying if I didn't say that this blind was much harder than the first one. There was a few, in the first time we did the blind with the other whiskeys, there was a few just clear decisions. With this one, a lot more tighter. The playing field was condensed considerably. With that being said, let's find out what was the order. So we have the answer key in said pocket that was provided by my wonderful and beautiful and very patient wife. So last place should be no surprise, was Glass 5. And that is going to be E. So this is actually a bit of a surprise here. And that is going to be, so 5th place was Old Forester 100. I don't know, I just felt like maybe coming off the back of these 4 pretty solid whiskeys, the palate just didn't stand up to these other ones. And obviously a lot of this time, I thought that this would make it through almost maybe to the final bracket, but maybe where it was put itself into a bit of a spot there, because like I said, these all had great finishes and there's a lot going on with these. But then when we drank this one, had a great nose and the palate at the beginning was pretty solid, but then it just fell off a cliff. It is only $22, $23, so I guess that kind of makes sense, but do I need to reevaluate this whiskey? Because I'm someone who constantly sings the praises of this bottle, but I thought that they was cause maybe a couple of upsets here and there. Last place, Old Forester 100, pretty surprising. So these other 2 is pretty tight, but we ended up going with Glass 1 as 4th place, and that's going to be C for Charlie, and that is going to be, oh, that's a surprise. It is going to be Old Forester Barrel Strength. So at this point, I guess as a whiskey tube, I need to pull myself out of a hole here, because this is an incredible bottle. Generally, I've never tried this store pick before, and it is a store pick. It's a single barrel store pick. So I guess I need to have some accountability for this finishing 4th, but this should have been in the final bracket, I guess. That's a massive surprise. Again, single barrel, we can only control so much, but generally the Old Forester barrel strength single barrels are some of the best value in bourbon. Bit of a shocker, 4th place. Let's move on. We like this one because it had more brown sugar, more creme brulee style notes, but then this was a really nice addition to those other 2 that kind of lifted us up a little bit. But then when we went back through them, when we traced them against each other, we ultimately went for this one. This was great because I felt like it just done really well where it was positioned. So this is gonna be Glass 3 and in 3rd position. B as in Bravo, and that is going to be, this is an absolute shocker, and that is going to be this guy, 3, and I thought that this bottle could actually win the whole thing. That is the 117 series bottled in bond. This is one of the best bottled in bond bourbons I have ever tried. I'm kind of speechless a little bit here, if I'm completely honest. This was good. It just was a little different to this one. It was fresher, it had more like apple notes, more citrus notes. It wasn't bogged down in the kind of darker molassesy caramel maple syrup flavors of this. And potentially I should have probably put it through just because of that alone. But we've seen 2 massive shocks so far with these guys. So then we have 2 whiskeys left, and I guess anything's possible at this rate, right? This was 2nd place, and this is going to be D as in Delta. Let's put this guy here. 1897. Whoa, that is a pretty big shock. 1897 had the gusto, had the machismo ability to be able to beat out the Old Forester single barrel strength, Old Forester 100 and Old Forester 117. This is pretty wild. It has some really nice toasted marshmallow, double oak, wood presence, caramel, popcorn, cherry liqueur for days. It was a really great whiskey, and this is pretty incredible to see how well it's done in this blind. Second place, Old Forester 1897 bottled in bond, which means that today's winner, and we'll double check this, is going to be Old Forester 1920. Some normal service has been resumed here. Thankfully, Old Forester 1920 stole the absolute show. It was a combination of all these whiskies, if you like, but was just incredible, incredible. And this kind of restores my faith in my own whiskey knowledge, because I promote 1920 as some of the best value money in bourbon that you can buy, excluding this bottle, I guess, at this point. It had, like I said, those caramel sauce notes, the fruit notes, the cherry notes, everything, and it was so completely well balanced. So I'm going to go and cry in a corner somewhere. We have a couple of decisions to make, because Old Forester 1920, Old Forester 1897 move on to the final bracket, and we need to think which one whiskey will join them. We have the Old Forester King's Ranch, and then the Old Forester 117 are going to be the two wild cards. Maybe we need to do like a head-to-head. I think what I'll do is, before this video posts, or any of these videos, I'm going to post a comment on the Whiskey Cove community over on YouTube, asking which one do you think will be the best one, or what is your favorite Old Forester, and whoever gets the most votes, we'll just sling that into the final. So hopefully you've enjoyed this absolute crazy bracket as we drink through the world's whiskey one glass at a time. Let's get the heck out of here. Run the video. Bye.